Thanks, Jill. I'm another Libran optimist, but also a tiger, which is what makes me an activist. What an extraordinary panel and an extraordinary conference. And it's so nice to actually hear people really talk about power in a meaningful way and how power can shift. And an issue that's far too much about power is sex. And I believe passionately, and I'm sure all of you do here, that every woman and girl everywhere should have the right to decide about her own body and be able to get the services that she needs for her sexual health. But at the moment, her rights are under attack, whether it's Alabama or Tamil Nadu. Politicians feel they have the right to take away girls' power. I've been an activist since I was 12 years old, and I know what women and girls can do if they stand up together and demand change. And today I want to talk about something which I believe is critical to changing power dynamics, and that's self-care. Who here has heard about self-care this week? Quite a few people. Okay. So self-care means a lot of different things, but in this particular context, I want to talk about helping people stay healthy and prevent disease with or without the help of a healthcare provider. So when it comes to sexual and reproductive health, this means things like HIV self-testing or self-injectable contraceptives or medical abortion pills. Until the power over a girl's sexual health and rights is in her hands, we will not be satisfied. And at the moment, her health is in the hands of politicians and providers and presidents and companies, and not in her hands. I want to live in a world where girls learn about sex, and crucially, about saying no. And also, I want to know whether doctors and midwives and the community can help her find contraception. And if she needs to get help, does she need to travel for hours? Is it convenient? Is it available? Is it even affordable? There's so many factors that she can't control, which end up influencing her life. So over the last few decades, quite a lot of work has been done to change this situation, but I want to talk to something which I believe will be truly disruptive, something that we can add to the mix and unlock access to millions and millions of girls and women that haven't been reached so far. We'd like to add self-care, because it shifts power to her, away from the system, whatever that system might be, the health system, the political system, the socioeconomic system, the cultural system in which she lives, the system that puts up barriers everywhere. We've already started to hear directly from women and girls, and that's where it needs to start. We need to listen. We need to understand what they want and need, but also what their current reality is, what the barriers are that they face. We hear about girls who have no control over their own future or feel that they don't, who feel shamed and forced into secrecy regarding their own sexuality, and girls who want to be a mum, but only when they're ready. We need to listen to these and make sure that self-care can put choice in their hands. At Children's Investment Fund Foundation, we've been working with our partners to do this. And we hear that when girls and women control their own contraceptives, they're more likely to use them. In fact, with self-injectable contraceptives, continuation rates go up by 50%, which is huge. We also hear that when boys self-test, when they can self-test, they're much more likely to know their status. And STI tests, which are delivered anonymously, are much, much easier for young people to get. And we know how important medical abortion is to stop women having their right to choose being denied. So we think self-care can transform health systems and make universal access to SRH a reality. But of course, there are going to be structural impediments to that, because it is a disruption to the health system to give people these choices and this control. It's so exciting, though, that we can actually do this. And later this month, the World Health Organization will launch the first guidelines on self-care. And this guideline will summarize existing evidence and give recommendations on how to institutionalize self-care in policy and practice for SRHR. And this is really important because we need to give people reassurance that self-care is also high-quality care and that we can trust people to do the right thing for them. But it's going to take dedication and effort. So this is the call to action bit. We need to be willing to challenge ourselves and our own organizations. Are we really, in all of our work, creating opportunities for self-care or locking in the very systems that deprive so many women and girls of their choices? If you work for government, you've got a really crucial role in making self-care a reality in your country. How can we leapfrog to self-care? Politics drives policy, and so that means for activists, we need to put pressure on governments, and we need to speak out to support champions when they embrace power shifts and putting control in the hands of girls. We need to help these champions because they will face huge pushback, and our community needs to defend them. There's a self-care booth on this floor near the youth zone, and you can leave your ideas there, you can learn more, and you can think about ways to shift power. There are people there that can talk to you about that. There's also a self-care trailblazer group that has been formed to enable implementation of the World Health Organization guidelines at local and national level, precisely to support those champions and overcome those barriers. But most importantly, we need to have women and girls at the front of everything we do. What do they need, and what do they want, and how can you help? I believe that one day it's going to be second nature just to use an app to understand your pregnancy options, to pick up a self-test from the pharmacy, or order a self-injectable contraceptive online. Self-care means putting power in the hands of women and girls. It's time to get on board. It's already happening. Let's make this the future of sexual and reproductive care. Thank you.
Don't leave yet, because I want to thank you very much. But I want to ask you, what from the work you've been doing on self-care at CIFF, what was a primary insight that you got from the basic background work you did? And what's one thing you think all the people here should take away?
Well, we do a lot of work on human-centered design, which means that before we design programs, we actually ask young women and girls what they want, because every reality is different, and we know that traditionally everything's quite top-down, that people design programs for girls, that they tell them what they should want, and there's a huge amount of judgment that comes with that, and it's very intimidating for people to access services. So we start with human-centered design, and if you combine human-centered design in programming with self-care, it's really about enabling the broadest range of options. So if somebody wants to go to a facility and sit down and have a long conversation, that's great. If they'd rather do that in the discretion of their own home and read stuff online and then access it from a pharmacy, that's also fine. So we found that if you give people more options, not just in terms of the method mix, which is key because self-care contraceptives and other commodities are really key to have the product, but it's also the way that it gets to people. So starting with what people want, how they want to receive services and products, and working back. So the key insight really is this will massively increase the number of people who have access to all the things that we care about, and it will also shift power because people will no longer be able to control how and when people access services. So the key thing we need to do is scale this up and make sure that the broadest range of options are available, because then we'll get to the largest number of people.
Well, this is perfect. So there you have a very specific, clear-cut idea and an ask for partnership. So, Kate, thank you a lot.
Thanks.
Great.